Welcome to Unit 2, Lesson 2. We'll be talking about how we go from thousands to thousandths. I'm going to write a number on the board here, and I would like for you to say the number in your mind. I'm going to be writing it in standard form. This is standard, meaning it's the normal way of writing numbers. This is the way that you've always written numbers and the way you've always read them. So how do you say this number? Well, in order to say this number correctly, you need to know your place values. As we go across in the place values, say them in your mind with me. The first place value is the ones place, the tens place, the hundreds place, the thousands place, the 10,000s place. If we were to go one more, this would be the 100,000s place. As you can see that we separate the units, which is what we would call these numbers over here, our units, from our thousands, which are the next three numbers. We're separating the units from the thousands with a comma. And we put a comma every three numbers to separate our units from our thousands, from our next three digits, which would be our millions, and then our billions. So that in my mind, when I look at this number and I'm looking to read it, I'm looking for the commas, and I'm looking to see what the first three numbers, which place values those are in. These two numbers, I don't have three of them, I only have two, are in the thousands place. So when I read this number, I read the entire number that I see within these three lines, or these place values, the thousands place values. I read that whole number, which is 35, and then I say the place value that they're in. They're in the thousands place, so I say 35,000. Then I look at what numbers I have left, and I only have units left. And so I look at this entire number within the units, and I say the number I see, which is 26. And I'm done. I just say 35,026. I don't say 35,000s. I don't use the plural. I say 35,026. I don't say 35,026 because that would imply that I have a decimal. So I have to leave that word out. And so to remind you, this is the standard way of saying a number. And today you're going to learn a few different ways to represent numbers. This is just one way, the one you're most familiar with. I'm going to show you the next way to write this exact same number right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take each digit of this number and I'm going to write what it's worth. I'm going to write the value of each digit. I'm actually going to put down what each one is worth. There's a couple of ways you could do this. One way to do this is to simply go to the first digit. My first digit is my 3. And ask yourself what place value this 3 is in. It's in the 10,000s place value. And now take that 3 and multiply it by 10,000. How much is 3 times 10,000? Well, that would be 30,000. So we're going to write that number. That's how much that digit is worth. Another way to go about finding the value of the 3 is simply to write the 3 and then write a 0 for every place value behind it. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 place values behind it. So we'll write our 3 and then we'll write 4 zeros, one for each place value behind it. That will also show you the value of that number. And I'm going to continue to do this with each digit. So I have 30,000 and the next digit's a 5. And there are 3 place values behind it. So I could just write 3 zeros. And I put my comma because I have 4 digits in this number. I also could have said 5 is in the thousands place value, and 5 times 1,000 is 5,000. I'm going to continue on, and I have a 0 in the hundreds place value, and because that 0 is actually worth 0 times 100, which is 0, I'm not going to put anything because nothing is the same as 0. And then I have my digit, the 2. And again, I'm going to I'm just this time going to put the 2 down and add 1 0 for the 1 place value that's behind it. I also could have noticed that the 2 is in the 10's place value and multiplied 2 times 10 to get 20. And then I have my final number, the 6, which is in the 1's place, and 6 times 1 is just 6. Now that I have written the value of all my numbers, I'm going to simply add a sign. I'm going to add the addition sign between my values, my numbers. And this is another way of writing the number 35,026. And in this way, you're probably quite familiar with this. This is called expanded form. Expanded form. This is another way of writing the same number, but obviously we're expanding it, we're stretching it out. We're stretching it out and adding the value of each digit. If you add up all of these digits, you will get 35,026. And now I'm going to show you another way to write this, and we're going to piggyback off of the expanded form. I've actually said this already once as I was doing expanded form. One of the ways I told you could do it was to take the first digit 3 and multiply it by 10,000, or the place value that it's in. This is how we got 30,000. And then we're going to add that to, how did we get 5,000? We multiplied 5 times 1,000. And we'll add that to how we got 20, which was 20 times 10, or 20 times the place value was in. And then the final number, we are going to show just 6 times 1, because that's how we ended up with the 6 in expanded form. This is using or showing the expression as the sum of the products of each digit and its place value. It's unlikely you'll be using this much in your life, but this is another way you could show it. Now we come to our final way of showing this digit, which would be, maybe you've already guessed this, but it's going to be in written form. Our probably favorite thing to do is to write a large number like this in written form. And to do that for this number, we would write 35. There can be no numbers, it has to be all words. 1,000. Remember, there's no and, so we just write 26. 35,026. When you're writing in word form, it's really important that you read the number you wrote in word form and then go read the actual number in standard form and make sure you're saying the exact same thing. If you're saying something different, you need to go and figure out what it is that's different and make that change. And so here to wrap up, I've given you 4 different ways to write a number. The first way is standard form, and that's the normal way that you've been doing it your whole life. The second one is expanded form, and that's a skill that you've learned in the past. You've seen this before. The third one is an entirely new way of doing it, but it's actually combined with expanded form. Because in order to do expanded form, this is the way I do it. I actually multiply the place value times the whole number. So this is a way that we call showing it as an expression of the sum of its products. And then the final way is writing it in words. And writing it in words means you need to know how to spell it, and that you're actually checking it by reading the number in standard form and then reading what you wrote in words to make sure that they are the same. So on page 42, there are 4 questions that you will be answering shortly. You're going to be writing numbers down in 3 different ways. They're going to give you the number in either standard form, or word form, or expanded form using powers of 10. First, I'd like to give you an example of what that might look like with a decimal. So here's a number in standard form. This is the way you would normally, that's what standard means, how you would normally write it. And I'd like you to try to read this number with me. We have 4 and 341 thousandths. Remind you how to read this. The entire number in front of the decimal is 4, so we say 4, and then we say and for any decimals that we see, and there will only be one decimal in a number. and then we look at the entire number behind the decimal, and we read the whole thing that we see, 341, and then we know our place values are tenths, hundredths, thousandths, so we have to say the place value of the last digit, so we're going to say thousandths. So let's read it one more time together. 4 and 341 thousandths. This is how you say the number. Now we need to write this number in a few different ways. We've already written it in standard form, so we need to now write it in expanded form. Let's look at the number 4, and we're going to just bring that 4 down. And we could, if we want to, since we have digits after the 4, we also have a decimal, and we would have to include that. We could put our decimal and a 0 for every digit after the 4. It's not necessary because this number is still 4, so I'm not going to do that because I'm dealing with just 4. And then I'm going to add the next digit, which is a 3, but it's not just a 3, it's 3/10 because this place value is tenths. And so I'm going to add a decimal 3 to show that it's 3/10. Then I'm going to add my next digit, which is a 4 in the hundredths place, hundredth. And so I'm going to add that, and I have to do that with a decimal 0.4. And again, I know there's numbers behind the 4. I could put a 0 behind the 4, but it's not necessary to have zeros at the end of decimals. It just makes it more complicated to say. And then I'm going to add my final digit, the 1, but it's in the thousandths place, so I need to add a decimal and 2 zeros to take the place of the tenths and the hundredths place. And now, since I've just done expanded form, it might have been even easier to do showing it by powers of 10 before you do expanded form. I actually do this one while I'm doing expanded form. The digit 4 would be the same as 4 times 1. And we would add that to 3, the digit 3, times the place value it was in, which is the tenths place. We could show that with a fraction. Then the 4 would be multiplied 4 times its place value, which is the hundredths place. Could show that with a fraction. And then my last digit, the 1, is in the thousandths place, and I could show that with a fraction as well by doing 1 times 1 1,000th. All of these fractions that I used could have been converted to decimals as well. You could have, instead of doing 1/10 as a fraction, just did decimal 1. You could have done, instead of 1 100th as a fraction, you could have done decimal 0.1. Same thing. And the same as 1,000th as a fraction is 0.001. I did put the 0 in front of the last one, and I should do it in all of them. It's not necessary, but it is helpful to have the 0 there. It does alert the person reading the number that there's no whole numbers. This is how you would write it using powers of 10. The final way to write this number is to write it using words. So to write it using words, you simply write the words that you say while you're reading the number. This is the trick. Read the number and then write exactly what you said. 4 and is how we start this. So we're going to write the number 4. It has to be the number version. And. That and is the decimal. 341 thousandths. 300. Go back and reread the number if you forget. 341 thousandths. 341 thousandths. With the TH, that's very important. And then go back and reread the number in standard form. 4 and 341 thousandths. Read the number you wrote in writing form. 4 and 341 thousandths. They read exactly the same, then you know you've done a good job. So this is how you're going to do questions 1 through 4 on your own. You may pause the video now and complete those questions.